The party at Jenna and Matt's house was one of those Friday night things that start casual and end up loud, music vibrating off the walls, the smell of wine and weed mixing with cheap cologne, and that familiar sense of forced relaxation you get when people try too hard to unwind. I've never really liked these things, but Lily loved them. She fed off the energy, the attention, the compliments. And because I loved her, I went along. I stuck to my usual post near the kitchen island, nursing a beer I wasn't enjoying, chatting briefly with whoever passed by, but mostly just watching her. Lily. She was in her element, laughing, her eyes sparkling, one hand always moving with her words. She wore a dark green dress that hugged her body just enough to draw stares but still looked married, respectable, whatever that meant. I noticed she wore the necklace I got her for our anniversary. That meant something, right? At one point, she was standing in a loose circle with 3 guys I vaguely recognized, friends of Jenna's from work, I think. I couldn't hear much over the background noise, but her voice cut through now and then. She was telling a story, something about a weekend trip she took to Napa with a girlfriend. People laughed in the right places, and then one of the guys leaned in, too close, and said something I almost missed. "Come on, Lily, don't act like you didn't love sneaking around last time." And the way she threw her head back and laughed. Not the laugh I knew. Not the one I'd hear late at night curled up on the couch. This was different. Performed. Flippant. Then, just as quickly, she tossed out the words that hit me like ice water. "Well, who said married women can't have fun?" Laughter. Big, messy, drunken laughter exploded from the group. It rippled out, people turning to look, grinning, nodding like it was the punchline of a joke they didn't hear but wanted to be part of anyway. And I was standing just a few feet away. And she didn't even look at me. For a second, I wondered if maybe I heard wrong. Maybe he said something else. Maybe she meant something else. But then she turned slightly, caught my eye, and smirked. Not warmly. Not reassuringly. A smirk like she was daring me to react. I waited for some kind of follow-up. A laugh in my direction. And I'm kidding. But she didn't give me anything. Instead, she turned her attention back to her drink, then changed the subject entirely, asking someone about the playlist like the last 30 seconds didn't happen. I stood there, trying to play it cool. Trying to breathe. It wasn't like we hadn't been in rough patches before. Work stress. Miscommunication. Long silences that went unspoken for weeks. But this was new. This wasn't distance or fatigue. This was a crack, a jagged, public crack in something I thought was still solid. I moved out of the kitchen and leaned against the back wall of the living room, trying to observe her without making it obvious. She was laughing again. Tossing her hair. Her hand touched one of the guy's arms as she reached for a wine glass. Casual. Familiar. Too familiar. A few minutes later, she wandered over to where I stood. Her drink was nearly empty. She looked beautiful. God, she always looked beautiful even when she was tearing me apart. "You okay?" she asked, sounding amused. I shrugged. "That joke earlier." She rolled her eyes and waved her hand dismissively. "Oh my God, are you seriously mad about that? It was just a joke. Lighten up, Mark." She said it like I was the one making a scene. Like I was the unreasonable one. "I'm not mad," I said, even though I was. "It just sounded personal." She snorted. "You think I'd say something serious in front of all these people? You're being paranoid." "Didn't feel like a joke," I said. She sighed, annoyed. "You always read into things. That's your problem." Then she leaned in, kissed my cheek absent-mindedly, and added, "Relax. It's a party." And with that, she disappeared back into the crowd. I stood there longer than I probably should have, pretending to be part of conversations I wasn't really in. Someone offered me another drink. I turned it down. I felt disconnected from the whole room, like I was underwater while everyone else was still laughing and breathing. On the ride home, she was upbeat, like nothing had happened. I stared out the passenger window, watching the streetlights whip past, my thoughts a mess of questions and doubt. When we got home, she kicked off her heels, poured herself a glass of water, and turned on Netflix like it was any other night. "I'm gonna shower," I said. "Okay," she replied, eyes already on the screen. Under the shower head, I stood still, letting the hot water beat against my back, trying to wash off the night, the doubt, the way her voice sounded when she said it. Who said married women can't have fun? That wasn't a joke. That was something else. I tried to push it aside, to sleep it off. But that night, I barely closed my eyes. Her words kept looping in my head, quieter now, like an echo you can't trace to its source. And every time I almost drifted off, I remembered the way she looked at me when I heard her. Not with guilt. Not even with fear. Just indifference. That was the part that scared me most. Not the joke. Not even what it might mean. But how little it seemed to matter to her that I'd heard it. After that night, everything started shifting, at first subtly, then like a slow earthquake under everything I thought was stable. I didn't say anything else to Lily about the joke, but something inside me stayed tilted, like a picture frame I couldn't straighten. I tried to act normal. She certainly did. But it was like my senses had been sharpened. Every little thing stood out now. Every word. Every silence. It started with the cologne. She came home from a spa appointment 2 days later, something she had started doing more often lately. Normally, she smelled like lavender or some herbal nonsense they use in massages. That evening, though, when she hugged me, I caught something else. Something sharp. Masculine. Cheap. What's that smell? I asked, trying to sound casual. She blinked. Essential oils, I guess. I think they used a different blend this time. I nodded slowly. Doesn't smell like oil? She shrugged and walked past me. Maybe the receptionist's perfume or something. It was packed today. And that was that. But my mind kept chewing on it. That same night, I noticed her phone screen down on the counter while she chopped vegetables. It used to be face up, buzzing with texts from her sister or some group chat. Now it was always face down. Always locked. And she was quicker to grab it when I walked in the room. Like she was hiding something. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. We were both busy. People go through phases. But once the seed was planted, it started growing. And once you start noticing patterns, it's hard to stop. Her laptop used to be wide open, Spotify playlists playing while she worked in the living room. Now it was always closed. Sometimes I'd walk in and hear it snap shut a split second before she looked up, smiling too quickly. "You startled me," she'd say. "Didn't mean to," I'd reply. And we pretend like everything was fine. Then came the receipts. Not metaphorical ones. Literal ones. I found one tucked in her coat pocket while looking for my car keys. A dinner receipt from a sushi place across town. Expensive. 2 entrees. A bottle of wine. The kind of spot you go for a date, not a solo dinner. We hadn't eaten there. Ever. I waited until we were brushing our teeth at night to bring it up. Casual again. Non-accusatory. "Hey," I said through phone, "have you been to that new place, Maury's? The sushi one downtown?" She didn't flinch. Just spit into the sink and said, "Nah, but Jenna told me it's amazing." I nodded. "We should go sometime." "Sure," she said, already wiping her face with a towel. Added to our ever-growing list. The lie slipped out of her mouth like it had been practiced. Rehearsed, even. And that's when I realized how often she lied lately, small ones, easy ones. Ones I might have missed before. I started replaying conversations in my head at night, like reruns of a show I wasn't enjoying anymore. There were so many things that didn't add up. All the late meetings that somehow never made it to her calendar. The spa appointments that left her more anxious than relaxed. The girls' nights she never had pictures from, no group selfies, no tags, nothing. I found another receipt a week later, this time in the laundry, stuck to a crumpled pair of jeans. Another restaurant. Another wine charge. 2 glasses again. Always 2. Still, I said nothing. And then there was the message. We were sitting on the couch one evening. She was flipping through a home decor magazine and I was half watching a basketball game, pretending not to be lost in thought. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced down. Just a reflex. It was a preview notification from one of her friends, Becca, I think. That brunette looked even hotter in person. "You lucky bit, eh?" Lily snatched the phone before the screen finished lighting up. Her thumb danced across it and just like that, the message was gone. I didn't say a word. She glanced at me. "Spam," she said, too quickly. I said, pretending to be distracted by the game. But my chest felt tight. My face burned. And still, I stayed quiet. Because silence felt safer than knowing for sure. Because admitting it out loud meant everything changed. And I wasn't ready for that. But I began cataloging everything in my mind. Dates. Times. Places. Her moods. Her excuses. I became an unwilling archivist of my own unraveling marriage. There were patterns I hadn't seen before, maybe because I didn't want to. Like how she always picked fights before going out, small ones about laundry or groceries or plans I'd forgotten. Fights that left her needing air or needing space. Fights that, in hindsight, looked a lot like preemptive justifications. It was getting hard to breathe in my own house. I felt like a stranger in rooms I'd furnished, eating meals I no longer tasted, smiling through conversations that felt like scripted theater. And yet, I kept playing the part. We went to a friend's baby shower the following weekend. Lily wore a soft blue dress and everyone complimented how radiant she looked. We posed for pictures. She laughed at jokes. She leaned on me like we were still us. And I smiled, played along, because I didn't want to answer the real question, what happens if I'm right? On the drive home, she hummed along to the radio while I stared out the window, wondering if the version of us in the photos would last longer than the real thing. I started noticing other people noticing her too. Guys at the grocery store. The barista who always remembered her name and added a heart next to it on the cup. I never used to think twice about that stuff. But now it all felt sinister. Maybe I was becoming paranoid. Maybe I was letting one joke turn into a conspiracy theory. But then I'd remember her face at the party. The way she didn't flinch. The way she wanted to be heard. The way she didn't care if I heard. It wasn't just the joke. It was everything that came after. The silences. The lies. The performance. It all started aligning like constellations I had been too blind to see. I knew I had to say something soon. Ask her. Confront her. But every time I tried to picture it, my throat closed up. What if she denied everything? What if she admitted everything? What if she cried? What if she didn't? The fear of knowing had somehow become worse than the fear of not knowing. But I also knew that I couldn't go on like this. Something had shifted and it wasn't going back. Trust isn't just lost in one grand betrayal. Sometimes it dies slowly, drip by drip, inconsistency by inconsistency, until one day you wake up and realize you're lying next to a stranger. And the worst part? You don't even know when that stranger moved in. It was a Thursday morning when she told me she'd be flying out to Chicago for a client onboarding conference. Her voice was overly chipper, like she was trying to sell me something. I'll only be gone for 2 nights, she said while packing her carry-on. Super boring, just panels and networking stuff. I stood in the doorway watching her fold sweaters she never wore and place her laptop neatly in a sleeve. What company is hosting it again? I asked. She didn't miss a beat. Rethink Global. They're trying to push some new SaaS platform. The words meant nothing to me, but she sounded confident, like she'd rehearsed the answer. She kissed me before she left, her lips cool and familiar. I'll call you when I land, she said. And she did. Around 6:15 p.m., I got a picture of an airport terminal and a short text. Landed safely. Long cab ride ahead. I'll call later. I stared at it for a long time. Something felt off. It wasn't the message. It was that the timestamp on the photo said 4:12 p.m. Central Time, almost 2 hours before she sent it. Like she'd been sitting on it. Like she wasn't really where she said she was. Still, I told myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe she had no service. Maybe her battery died. Maybe I needed to calm down. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the airline's website. Her flight was real. It had landed. But there was no mention of Rethink Global on her calendar. I checked 3 times. At around 10:20 p.m., just as I was finally dozing off on the couch, my phone buzzed with a smart alert from our doorbell camera. Motion detected. Someone was at our front door. I blinked at the screen, confused. Maybe a neighbor? A package? But when I opened the notification and tapped the footage, my heart stopped. It was her. Lily. Standing on our porch, wearing the same hoodie she'd packed for the Chicago trip. She was laughing. Her hair was tied back loosely. And she wasn't alone. A man was standing beside her. I didn't recognize him right away, tall, bearded, maybe a few years older than us. He was holding 2 takeout bags in one hand. They looked casual. Comfortable. An asterisk mate. She unlocked the door and they both walked in like it was nothing. Like it was normal. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I watched it again. And again. And again. The man reached for her waist at the door. Kissed her cheek. She didn't flinch. Didn't laugh it off. She just smiled. Warm. Familiar. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was her choice. I sat there frozen, gripping the phone in my hand until my knuckles turned white. It felt like someone had cut the wires in my brain, every emotion firing at once, crashing into each other. I felt fury, yes, but also numbness. That kind of numbness that comes right after you've been hit by something big, where your body knows before your brain does. She hadn't just lied. She had rewritten reality and expected me to live in her version of it. I didn't call her, didn't text, didn't even move from the couch. I just sat there, staring at that doorbell video on a loop, every second of it branding itself into my mind. It was like my brain didn't trust my own eyes. I kept hoping, irrationally, stupidly, that if I watched it one more time, I'd catch something that made it all okay. A wink at the camera, a glance of guilt, a sign this was some elaborate misunderstanding. But there was nothing, just laughter, comfort, routine. She knew the camera was there. We'd installed it together. She even picked the model. and she still walked through that door. With him. That was the part that broke me. Not the act itself, though it gutted me, but the ease of it. The comfort. The lack of hesitation. It meant this wasn't new. It meant this was something practiced. Repeated. It meant I hadn't just missed the signs. I'd been blind to an entire alternate life happening right under my nose. The silence in the house that night was unbearable. I kept listening for footsteps upstairs, even though I knew no one was there. I thought about going through her drawers, her laptop, her texts, but what was the point? I had what I needed. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It had walked through my front door like it belonged there. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the floor next to the couch, the phone in my hand. The video paused on her smile. By morning, I felt hollow. She didn't come back that day. She sent a text around noon. Conference is a drag, lol. Can't wait to come home to you. That one broke me. Not because it was cruel, but because it was casual. Because it meant nothing to her. Because it was so easy for her to pretend. I didn't respond. The whole day felt surreal. I went to work somehow. Sat in meetings. Answered emails. I smiled when people cracked jokes. But all I could see in my mind was that porch light illuminating her face as she welcomed someone else into our home. By evening, I was back on the couch, staring at the paused video. The irony of it all? I'd installed that doorbell cam for her. After a late-night package was stolen, she was worried about weirdos in the neighborhood. I never thought I'd be watching her from it. When she finally returned 2 days later, rolling her suitcase through the door like she had just returned from a business trip, I didn't say a word. She smiled and gave me a quick kiss. I'm exhausted, she sighed, flopping onto the couch. Long flight? I asked. She nodded, eyes closed. Delayed twice. Can't wait to just sleep in our bed again. I stared at her. That was the moment everything shifted. Not when I saw the video. Not when she lied about Chicago. But right there, when she curled up on our couch, eyes closed, face relaxed, still believing I was in the dark. She looked peaceful. And I realized I couldn't confront her yet, not because I was afraid, but because I had nothing left to say. What would yelling fix? What would tears undo? She had already made her decision. She just hadn't figured out that I had made mine. So I sat there, pretending to listen to her recap the conference, nodding at the right moments, laughing once, asking a few generic questions. And she played along too, effortlessly lying, layer after layer, with the same tone she used to ask me if we were out of milk. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was done playing the part of the clueless husband. Done defending a marriage only one of us was still showing up for. And in that moment, as I watched her fake her way through another story, I knew the truth had arrived. Loud, undeniable, and right there on my phone. She just didn't know yet that I'd seen it. The morning after she got back from Chicago, something shifted in me. Not with a bang, but quietly, like the final turn of a lock inside. I didn't say anything. I didn't bring up the video. I didn't demand an explanation, because there was nothing left to uncover. I had already seen everything I needed to see. I just stopped trying. No dramatic speech. No icy silence. Just stillness. Started small. That morning, I only made 1 cup of coffee. 1 plate of breakfast. For years, I'd always made 2, out of habit, out of love. I'd slide her plate over while she was still scrolling her phone, and she'd always say thanks without looking up. This time, she blinked at the empty spot across from me. No coffee for me? She asked. I figured you'd still be tired from the flight. She hesitated, then gave me a faint smile. That's fair. She didn't question it further, and I didn't offer anything else. That was the beginning. I stopped texting her updates throughout the day. No, heading home now, or do we need anything from the store? I didn't ask about her schedule or where she'd be. When she walked in late from work, I didn't check the time. I didn't check her face for guilt or answers. I barely looked up at all. She started noticing. That first week, she tried to re-engage. You seem quiet, she said once, poking at my leg while I sat on the couch. Just tired, I replied. And maybe that was true in a way. Tired of pretending. Tired of being played. The next night, she suggested we open a bottle of wine. We haven't done that in forever. I nodded and said, go ahead, then stayed on my laptop while she poured 2 glasses. I didn't touch mine. She stared at me from across the table, one hand resting lightly on the stem of her glass. You're acting weird, she said. I looked up. Am I? You're being distant. I shrugged. Noticed that, huh? Something in her expression flickered uncertainty. I wasn't giving her the script I used to follow. She tried again. Is this about last week? She asked carefully. What about last week? She blinked. I don't know. You've been cold since I got back. I didn't realize, I said, standing up. Maybe you're imagining things. Her eyes followed me, scanning for sarcasm, for emotion. She found none. The next few days were a quiet unraveling. She started testing me. Wearing tighter dresses around the house. Taking longer to get ready for errands. Leaving her perfume on a little thicker when she passed by. At dinner with friends, she casually mentioned how liberating her trip had been. I watched her lips move, watched the little sideways glances she threw at me, waiting for me to react. I didn't. Because I didn't care what game she was playing anymore. I wasn't her audience. I wasn't her opponent. I was no longer part of the match at all. And that terrified her. She began to get bolder. More passive-aggressive. You could at least pretend to want me, she snapped one evening after I went to bed early. You act like I'm not even here. I looked at her for a long second and said, you've made it pretty easy to forget. The silence that followed was thick. She didn't speak again that night. From then on, it became a slow psychological dance, one where I wasn't dancing anymore, but she hadn't realized she was the only one moving. She started staying out later. Once, she came back past midnight, slightly tipsy. I heard the keys fumble at the door, heard the heavy footsteps in the hallway. But I didn't get up. Didn't check where she'd been. Didn't text. Didn't ask. She came into the bedroom quietly, maybe expecting me to confront her. I kept my back to her. Eyes open in the dark. Nothing. The next morning, she tried to be cheerful. Morning, she said, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder. Sorry I came in late. Got caught up. I sat up slowly, nodded, and walked past her without a word. Went straight to the shower. I heard her sigh behind me, frustrated. Her moves were falling flat now. It was like she kept flipping switches in the control room, but the lights wouldn't turn on. I was done giving her power. She started bringing up old memories out of nowhere. Remember when we got rained out in Nashville, she said one night, out of the blue, while folding laundry. And we ate the greasy pizza in the hotel room watching documentaries? I didn't look up. Yeah, I said. That was it. No warmth. No nostalgia. Just a flat acknowledgement that, yes, that had happened. That was how I dealt with her now. Acknowledgement without engagement. She began asking to go on walks together. Let's get out, get some air. It's good for us. Us. Suddenly, us was back in rotation. I've got stuff to do, I'd say, not even glancing at her. Once she asked if we could cook dinner together. Like we used to, she added quickly with a weak smile. I've already eaten. Since when do you eat before 6? Things change, I said. She didn't speak after that. Just nodded and turned back to the stove. Evenings used to be her favorite part of the day, her unwinding hours where we'd share a bottle, sit on the couch, legs tangled up, talking nonsense about the week. Now she sat across the room from me, scrolling her phone while sneaking glances as if trying to figure out if I was really still here or just an echo wearing my skin. One night, she finally cracked. Just say it, she said as I sat reading. Say whatever it is you're thinking. I looked up slowly, placing the book on my lap. Why would I do that? Because I know you're mad. I know something's going on. You're not talking to me. You're not even looking at me. Just tell me what I did. And there it was. The desperation. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked quietly, you really want me to answer that? She hesitated. Yes. No, you don't, I said. Then I picked up my book again. She stormed off. The door to the guest room slammed hard. I didn't follow. She didn't come back to our bed that night. But I knew she barely slept. I could hear her pacing around 2 a.m., her footsteps careful, tentative, like she was deciding whether to come in and try again. She didn't. The next day, she tried a new angle. Mark, she said while pouring coffee, we're not okay. I didn't reply. I want to fix this. Still nothing. She set the mug down harder than necessary. I know you hate me right now. But this isn't healthy. We can't keep pretending. Funny, I said. I was just thinking how good you are at pretending. That landed hard. She didn't respond. Just stared at me, her eyes a strange mix of fear and guilt, and maybe for the first time understanding. She finally realized that I wasn't ignoring her to punish her. I was done because I didn't need her to explain anymore. She had shown me everything. Through her lies, her indifference, her ease. There wasn't a version of this where she got to undo it all with a speech or a cry or a kiss. I wasn't waiting for her to come clean. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I was just already gone. Still living in the house. Still breathing the same air. But emotionally, spiritually, I had walked out that night with the truth in my pocket and never looked back. And now she was the one trying to catch up, trying to rewind, trying to get back into a life I'd quietly packed up and abandoned. But it was too late. She'd made the rules of this game. And now she was playing it alone. It was subtle at first, the panic. It crept in through her voice, her body language, the way she hovered just a little longer after saying something, waiting for a reaction that never came. She was trying to reel me back in, only this time the lines were dead. I think she assumed it was a phase. That I was sulking, pouting. That eventually I'd blow up, cry, accuse, beg. That I'd do something. But I didn't. Because she had already taken everything. When someone breaks you, not loudly but piece by piece, they don't expect silence. They expect drama, backlash. And when you give them nothing, when you rob them of the power to matter, that's when they start to come undone. That's when Lily started to fall apart. She would swing between affection and provocation like a pendulum she couldn't stop. One morning I came downstairs to find her making pancakes. She hadn't cooked in weeks. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and maple syrup. She smiled when she saw me. Thought I'd surprise you, she said, flipping one over. It's Saturday after all. I sat down at the table, but I didn't touch the food. Just stared at my coffee. She brought over a plate anyway. Set it gently in front of me like that would make everything better. Like pancakes could patch up a trail. I nodded. Thanks. She waited. Nothing. She finally said, you used to say these were your favorite. I used to say a lot of things. Her hand tightened slightly around her fork. Later that same day, she came downstairs in one of her old date night dresses, short, tight, unmistakably deliberate. Going somewhere? I asked without looking up. She smiled faintly. Just felt like dressing up. I nodded. You look nice. No compliment. No warmth. Just observation. She stood in the mirror a little longer than usual that evening, adjusting her earrings, reapplying her lipstick. And when she walked out the door, I knew she was hoping I'd stop her. I didn't. When she came back 4 hours later, smelling of perfume and wine, I was on the couch reading. She waited near the stairs like she wanted me to ask where she'd been. I didn't look up. Eventually, she said, aren't you going to ask? I turned the page. Would it matter? That answer shattered something in her. I saw it. She turned and walked up the stairs quickly, but not before I caught the way her eyes brimmed. The next day, she cleaned the entire house. Washed clothes. Vacuumed. Lit candles. Made soup. Things she hadn't done in months. She played music in the background, our old playlist. The one we made on a road trip to Oregon. A sad little move meant to trigger nostalgia. I didn't comment. At dinner, she leaned across the table and said, do you remember when we added that Norah Jones song because the mountains reminded you of it? I looked at her calmly. No. She blinked, confused. Really? You used to say it. I don't remember. She stared at me for a beat too long, then dropped her eyes back to her plate. She was unraveling but trying to keep it dignified. That didn't last. The next week was chaos. She started picking fights over nothing. The way I folded towels. The way I left dishes in the sink. The way I didn't answer fast enough when she asked what I wanted for dinner. You're punishing me, she snapped during one of these episodes. You're being cruel on purpose. I looked at her calmly. You think silence is cruelty? No, she spat. But indifference is. I didn't respond. She wanted a reaction. Any reaction. Rage, tears, even laughter. But I didn't give her any. Because I didn't care anymore. She tried again 2 nights later, this time in the middle of the night. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard her come in. She crawled into bed beside me, wrapped her arms around my chest like nothing had ever happened. I miss us, she whispered. I said nothing. Her grip tightened. Say something. Why? She pulled away then. So that's it? You're done. I turned onto my side, facing away from her. You ended this. I'm just living in it. The next morning, she was gone by the time I got up. I found a note on the kitchen table, needed to clear my head. Be back later. No kiss. No heart. Just black ink on cold paper. It wasn't just that she didn't know what to do. It was that everything she used to do, every tool in her emotional kit wasn't working. The charm? Wasted. The manipulation? Neutralized. The memories? Dead. Even her anger had nowhere to go. One night, I found her standing in the hallway staring at the photo wall, the one she used to update every year. I watched her as she touched one of the frames, the picture from our trip to Charleston. She looked like a stranger examining someone else's life. She didn't hear me behind her. I said softly, "That was a good weekend." She turned, startled. Her face lit up briefly, like a spark. "Yeah," she said. "You got so sunburned that day at the beach." I nodded. "Guess I forgot the sunscreen." She smiled, but it didn't last. I walked past her then, slowly, back to the bedroom. Didn't wait for a response. That flicker of hope she'd felt, it faded fast. I could feel it behind me. Later that night, I heard her crying in the guest room. Quiet, muffled sobs. The kind you try to hold in and can't. For a second, my heart ached. Reflex. Like muscle memory from an old life. But it passed. Because I knew those tears weren't about me. They were about her. About her losing control. About realizing that she had created this distance, brick by brick, and now couldn't find her way back. She used to control the emotional weather in her house. She could bring sunshine, thunderstorms, cold snaps. And I used to let her. I'd chase the warmth. Apologize for the rain. Wait out the storms. But not anymore. Now the air was still. Lifeless. No wind. No noise. Just the quiet absence of power. And it was breaking her. You could see it in her hands, always fidgeting now. In her eyes, always searching for something that used to be there. I didn't hate her. I wasn't trying to destroy her. I wasn't playing games. I was just done. And she finally knew it. I wasn't reacting because I didn't have to. Because she was no longer worth the reaction. That's what made it so devastating. Not the silence, but the fact that I was fine with it. Lily had always been good at emotional choreography. She knew when to cry, when to apologize, when to bring up remember that time when, like it was a healing spell. It used to work. Every time. And I think she counted on it working again. She started leaning into nostalgia hard. She cooked the meals I loved, the ones she used to make before she got too busy. She lit candles at dinner, played our old songs in the background. She even wore the hoodie of mine she used to steal early in our relationship, the one she said smelled like home. But by then, it didn't smell like anything. One night, I came home to find a movie already playing, our favorite one, the one we'd watched on our third date. She was curled up on the couch with popcorn, 2 glasses of wine, like nothing had ever happened. Like she could just rewind time with a remote control. She smiled and patted the seat next to her. I figured we could just, chill tonight. Like before. I looked at her. At the scene she had set. At the fake normalcy of it. "Go ahead," I said, walking past her to the bedroom. "Let me know how it ends." I didn't see her face after that. But I didn't need to. I could feel it. That silence, the shocked, hurt kind. The kind she used to give me. But I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't acting. I just didn't care anymore. And that scared her far more than anger ever could. She left a note the next day. A literal sticky note on the fridge. "Dinner at 7. You don't have to come, but I'd like you to." I didn't go. I heated up leftovers at 6, ate alone in the den, and went to bed before she called me. She didn't knock. Didn't follow. She was starting to understand. This wasn't a phase. It wasn't punishment. It was distance. Permanent. Incurable. I could hear her on the phone sometimes, late at night, whispering in the guest room. Her voice low, desperate. She had stopped calling whoever he was. Now she called her sister. Her mom. Anyone who would listen. I never asked who she was talking to. And she never offered to tell me. It wasn't because she didn't want to. It was because she knew I wouldn't ask. And that silence, that cold, clinical, detached silence, it did what no argument, no affair, no lie had ever done before. It broke her. One evening, she sat next to me on the couch. No wine, no music, no small talk, just her, just silence. She sat close, closer than she had in months, like she was trying to find the version of me she used to love, used to manipulate. But I wasn't him anymore. I'd outgrown him. I felt her watching me, waiting, hoping I'd say something, maybe start a fight or finally break down or accuse her and give her the chance to explain. But I had nothing left to say. She finally whispered, "Do you hate me?" I turned to her. "No," I said. "I just don't feel anything anymore." Her face crumpled, but she didn't cry. I think she wanted to. I think she needed to. But something in her knew that my silence wasn't a phase. It was a verdict. That moment, more than any confrontation, any yelling match, any dramatic goodbye, that was the end. Because when love dies, it doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just Goes quiet. We sat there for a long time, the TV still playing in the background. Neither of us really watching. Just breathing the same air. Two people with nothing left to share. Finally, she said, "I was stupid." I didn't respond. She nodded as if agreeing with herself. "I thought you'd fight for me." "I did," I said. "You just weren't watching." That was it. That was the truth. I had fought. Quietly. Desperately. I had tried to forgive, to rationalize, to rebuild. But she never noticed because she was too busy destroying. Now the fighting was done. Now she was the one holding on. But there was nothing left to hold. And for the first time, Lily, who had always been so sure, so loud, so untouchable, sat next to me trembling. Because she finally realized something she had never even considered. I wasn't afraid of losing her anymore. And that's when she finally became afraid of losing me.